Hi, I'm Mary Bouifam. I'm a VP and Chief of Staff of Engineering at Indeed.
I have actually two careers. One is I was, in my first part of my career, I was a scientist. So that's my academic side, engineering, chemical engineering. And then my second career is continue to work with product development and engineering and really all in tech. And so my story, as you could imagine, being kind of an Asian woman in engineering, I'm usually the only one, or sometimes one of two, or maybe three if I'm lucky. And it can be a very isolating experience. And so I don't know how many of you are in here who have that experience when you're the only different thing in the room. And sometimes that could be you're the only male in the room, or you can be the only female in the room, or of anything that's different. It can be a very isolating experience. And being in tech and in engineering, it's always kind of like I almost feel like that's kind of like my lonely journey. I've never had a lot of people of the likes to hold my hand and say, hey, Mary, let's do it this way because it's so much easier. And so I think that for me, it just kind of helped me lean into making sure that none of you would have to have that lonely journey. So that's really my motivation, is to make it easier for everybody who has that experience, that you're different, to feel empowered and own yourself and just do your thing.
Hello, I am Christina Lewis. I'm a finance leader here at Western Digital. I also lead our Global Women's Network, and also am involved with our Black Employees Network. That speaks to my intersectional identity. So being out here, I think in the Bay Area, especially Silicon Valley, it's been a different experience for me. I'm originally from North Carolina in the South, where I was often used to being like one of few. But I came to California, I was like one of only. And so for me, being from the South, I think a few things are very important to me: my faith, my culture, my community. And so that's what really helped me, I think, when I was back east, and out here had to kind of rebuild that too, because those were some of the things that I looked to help me maneuver through some of those only experiences, right? So I think, just to your point, I think that's why sometimes I'm so involved, is because I have a real interest in making sure people feel a sense of belonging, and making sure that being the only or being, different is not something that is hampering your success. Okay.
Hi, I'm Merritt Kiesenbing Anderson, and I think before I talk about myself, I want to just say how amazing it feels to be here amongst all women of color. And I want to thank Cindy and the team for this, because it feels really good. It feels really good. It's not often that I spend time on these panels where, one, it's all diverse women, and two, that the audience is composed of that. So I feel really safe and really comfortable. And I think I want to thank you for creating this space for us to have this conversation. So I'm Merritt Kiesenbing Anderson. I'm the former Vice President and Employment Counsel at GitHub. I am currently, as I have recently written about, hitting pause. I'm 7 months from stepping away from GitHub, and I'm currently the Chief People Officer of my family. And I look, CHRO, Chief People Officer of my family, I look forward to talking a little bit more about what that means as a woman of color, not having people in my lived experience that have ever not hustled and have never not had multiple jobs and have ever had the privilege, I'm getting chills as I'm seeing heads nod, to basically say I'm stepping away to focus on me and focus on my family. So I think I bring that to the panel today around realizing your worth and getting what happens when you get there. And it's been a really intense journey for me this last 7 months, and I look forward to sharing a bit about it with you today.
Awesome. Wow. How do I follow with this? Obviously, I want to echo what the panelists have already said. Thank you so much for the invitation and creating a space, a safe space to have the conversation and have a feeling of a sense of belonging. That's really important, I think, for everyone. And also it goes back to the companies and duplicating that feeling afterward as well. My name is Sepida Nasiri. I'm the founder of Persian Women in Tech. It is a community comprised of women from the MENA region particularly. I am an immigrant. I've immigrated actually a couple times, first from Iran to Germany and then from Germany to the US. So with that said, having had really difficulties, with different cultures and different languages to understand, and also learning to fit in, or being my authentic self and exploring what I can do and how I can create impact where I am was very important. So, and I think that's what I bring to this panel is, finding your worth wherever you are. It doesn't matter where you are, and being authentic so that you can actually bring the voice that's needed for that particular space.
Thank you, Sepida. And since you have the microphone, I think I'm going to direct my first question your way, which is, when we talk about this journey to really owning your power and knowing your worth, there are going to be challenges to that along the way, right? So can you talk a little bit about maybe one of your biggest challenges to your self-confidence on your journey and how you overcame that?
Yeah. I just mentioned, obviously, in my introduction that I have traveled or immigrated to different countries, and that was really my challenge, having a sense of belonging, because I didn't know from a very young age, what that really meant, and fitting into cultures. And I looked different, I spoke different, I had an accent, or I still do. People tell me, "Oh, what's your accent all about?" And I can tell you one specific moment in high school. I went to Monte Vista in Cupertino, and my ESL teacher, who I cannot remember her name, but she's the first person that actually pushed me to understand my worth, that I had knowledge because I was an immigrant. And she signed me up to speak at Stanford at a young age, at 16, to talk about diversity and inclusion back then, because we had that issue at our high school. So that was one of the first thing. I just felt like I didn't fit in anywhere. I had an accent, and understanding the cultures, the differences, and so forth. So that was one of the difficulties, and that translated throughout my career path. I've always worked in tech. Obviously, I went to high school in down the street from Sun Microsystem and Apple, so it was just a no-brainer to somehow be in technology. I studied business at UCI, and then I came back after starting my first company. So I never have actually worked in a corporate setting. Maybe that's an immigrant thing or not, I don't know. But with that said, always had that in my mindset that we need to pay it forward and we need to help people. So when I came back working for startups, I did feel, obviously most of us do, in tech, a little bit lonely, being in management and being the only person that had the crazy ideas, had a different way of looking at things, whether that's products or how we tackle things. And everyone just looked at, "Are you sure?" I'm like, yes, you want to include everyone, right? So, the challenges come at any level, whether you're starting early, whether you're at management level, whether you start your own business, you always will have that feeling that you're different. And that's great, because companies need different so that you can represent another voice as well. And that was something that I experienced.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sepida. And since you're handing the mic to Merritt, Merritt, I know, one of the things that we talked earlier today about quite a bit was imposter syndrome, and how that inner voice can be so critical in holding you back, and how when we treat ourselves with the same respect that we treat other people around that inner voice, then that's one way that we can actually quiet it, right? Have you experienced that inner voice in your journey, and what have you done to quiet it?
So it's amazing, and I'm bummed that I missed that session this morning with Stacy. I think that I've experienced it two ways, and I just shared back in the green room with the ladies that I come from healthcare. First of all, I'm a labor and employment attorney, so it's a very traditional, the legal field is a very traditional conservative space. And then I worked in healthcare for a decade before I went to tech. So I was already an outsider. So when we talk about like intersectionality, like part of it was like, I didn't come from one of the pedigreed institutions within the tech ecosystem. So the fact that I even got into the door was pretty huge. I was also on the kind of more seasoned side. I had children. So I walked in a full-on black suit with high heels to a sea of white men with beards and hoodies and said, what the hell did I just do? Like, where am I? And I was telling them, and then they're like, well, come and see the rooftop where there's the bar. And then I had to climb four flights of stairs. And I'm like, what am I doing? Where am I? And there's 19 different bottles of kombucha. And I just am like, I have my little cooler that I brought my lunch. So when you think about the layers of imposter syndrome, I'm like, okay, here it is. So I think for me, it was like, am I good enough? VCs don't know who I am. Why did they? Venture capitalists don't know who I am. I didn't come through a network to be here. I came from healthcare. I'm not an industry person. I'm a woman of color. I have children. I have to go home at 4:00 because I need to be with my children and I want to be with my children. And so it was really terrifying. Can I do it? Can I do the work? Knowing that I had worked for so many years, and why do I believe these things? Why do I listen to the voice that's telling me you're different? Yeah, I'm different, but I have so much to bring to the table. And I think throughout my career, the silencing of those voices has been building a team and having allies that are reminders of, hey, you totally belong at the table. You have a voice. You're adding value. You're completely and totally in ownership of your work and are contributing so much. And so I think that's what it's been, is making sure that I was checking in with myself beyond like goals on paper to say, you actually belong here. You're making it. Don't keep looking behind your back to see if somebody's going to put you in a room and say, it's time for you to go. Time's up, And I think right now I'm in a different space of my journey, and that fact that I've been out of the workforce for 7 months and now I'm doubting myself, like, can I come back? And am I ready to go back? Do I want to go back? Do I want to consult? And it's like, you did this for 5 years and you led an exit with Microsoft. Like you actually worked, So part of that now for me is trying to silence those voices of, you don't have the grit and the tenacity and what's needed to succeed again. In a different space and time. So it's two different experiences with imposter syndrome for me in the last, decade, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing you also say is that it's not a one and done deal.
No, I think it's like your mental health, right? It's part of my mental health journey. I see a therapist every week. I talk about it. It's really important to be real with your experience because you got to talk to somebody. Otherwise that voice in your head becomes a little too close of a companion, So I think that's what's helpful. Like what helped me in the first part of my journey is not helping me now. You have to come up with different mechanisms to counteract that voice, and how to like have it be a partner and not something that's owning your experience.
Absolutely, Merritt. So, Mary?
I love that story, and it's not one and done. I think it's in a lot of our career and experience. If we are interested in learning and growing, we're always going to do something new for the first time. And so with that, you always have that nagging kind of fear. Can I actually do that? Can I actually succeed? Or am I going to deliver? Things like that. So, but I think that as we go through our life journey and work and deliver, we build a little bit of confidence. So that nagging voice is never going to go away. There's no magic pill that's going to make it go away. But I think that using your experience and building on it, you can settle the voice or turn the volume down a lot and just say, I've learned these new things before. I've delivered new things before, and it's okay, So I think that to me is just a journey of learning, which I think is really what drives me. If I don't learn, if I don't do new things, it's kind of like death, So there's a little bit of that anxiety, and you just have to kind of just turn down the volume of that voice and believe in yourself. And that, of course, that's easier said than done. But the more you do it, I think the more you have the confidence that you can do it in the future. But it is a journey, and it never ends.
So I have to say, so I've known Mary for a few years now. We are former colleagues as
When
well.
we were children.
Yes. That's right. We started working when we were 5. And, you know, when I see you in action, I cannot imagine that inner voice or inner critic, because you are so, when you walk into a room, you own it. You state what you know, you're there for. You aren't afraid to say what you think. And so was that something that you developed over time, or have you always been like that?
It might be a shortcoming, actually, you know, the lack of self-preservation genes. I think, again, it's just being in engineering. So I'll tell you a story. When I first came here, I was a young person, and our family was the first Vietnamese family in Kentucky, and desegregation was happening at the time. So for a lot of you don't even know what that means, but we had to fill out school forms, and there were 2 bubbles in the school forms. You were either white or you were black. I was neither, and I went and talked to my teacher. I'm like, what am I? You know, which bubble do I fill out? And so they said, well, you're clearly not black, so you must be white. And I'm like, I don't know about that. So that just, I mean, I'm just sharing you that story so that you know that it's kind of like the experience that you carry, and you're kind of like, I don't know what that is. I don't belong anywhere, you know? It just that sense of you don't fit anywhere. You're the square peg in everybody, all the holes are round or whatever, different shape. And so that gives you a lot of strength, because the other option is you just don't move on because you can't deal with it. So I think that having that experience actually gave me a lot of strength, is that, you know, you're different and you're just gonna have to chart your own path. I've known Cindy a long time, and a lot of times in my career as a chief of staff for a lot of very senior leaders, I have to do things for the first time, and there was nobody to show me how to do it. Like, I had to put together a board deck. There was no instruction manual on how to put together a board deck, but you did it. I have to write earnings, talking points. Again, so these things. And you just do it, you know, you just kind of learn and pick up ideas and connect the dots. And after a few times like that, you do build the confidence. You do build the confidence that, hey, if I'm not gonna figure it out, if I don't know exactly what to do now, I have the ability to figure it out. And that's where your allies are really important. Your tribe is really important, building your network of people that you know are going to support you, because you do not have all the answers. And that's how it helps you a little bit to give you more confidence to move on. So
I think that's actually a really good segue to Christina, because Christina, since I've known you, not as long as Mary, right? But
you were a teenager.
Yeah, teenager. You know, since I've known you as somebody who really strives to learn and challenge themselves, and really put themselves out there to do new things. And so I'm curious about what drives that, and how has that informed your journey to really knowing your worth today and embracing that?
Well, I think part of it is that, you know, having experiences throughout your life where, take a step back. I was doing some research study about identity, and they talk about how identity is formed in children. And research shows that identity is not just vertical. A lot of identity among children is more horizontal, right? So while you have loving families, you have parents, like for myself, my parents told me I can do anything I wanted to do. Even today, when I talk to my mom, she says, you know, you're amazing. Go in there and just wow those people. I'm like, Mom, 40. But what really impacts your identity are like the people you go to school with, the people that are your peers, you know. And there were so many instances where, you know, if I stuck out, you know, I said, okay, at least I'm smart, but, you know, I've never been athletic. I've never, you know, never had necessarily the best clothes. We weren't the wealthiest family, we, you know, just kind of not fitting in. And I don't like people telling me what I can't do. So there is something in me that's like, you know, someone says, well, you can't do that, and watch me. And so I like to learn new things on my own. So I had a boss one time that was like, I said, hey, I want to do something in strategy. I want to be more strategic, blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, I don't really see that. Okay. And so what I would do is I would just take these Harvard Business Review studies and, you know, read all about Michael Porter. I think I talked to you about that. And then I would just take on projects where I could just implement it myself. Why? Because you said I couldn't do it and I wanted to do it, so I did it anyway. And then when I prove you wrong, I also prove myself right. And so for me, because I am really competitive, I like to do what people say that I can't do, right? And I'm also ambitious, so I know, like, I would see other people living these lives and I'm like, how do they get there? I've never believed that this was just for the 1% or just the special people. And I'm trying to figure out, how can I do that? You know, how can, and if someone says that I can't do it, that must mean that they're scared that I will. And I think that's just a Christina thing. I know that annoys people, but that's part of what drives me.
You know, I feel like there's a very common thread here, right? Which is when you have this sense growing up of not belonging somewhere or not fitting into something, it gives each of you this inner fire, right, that helps you drive you further and achieve. So what some people, at least, you know, when you look at society and you see all the research about how having intersectional identities is like 2 double whammies, right, in your career, you've turned that into a strength, right? A reason for why you are the successful women that you are here on the stage. So, you know, I'd love to hear from any one of you, can jump in on this one. What is it that you think is actually holding women of color back from embracing their worth?
I'll start.
Go.
So I have a little passion about this because a lot of research, a lot of people, not the research, but a lot of what I hear when I go to conferences and everyone's like, just believe in yourself. You can do it. Just believe in yourself. And research is now showing that to some extent that can be true for some people, right? But again, intersectional identities, what fits one doesn't always fit the other. A lot of research is now showing a lot of women do actually believe in themselves, but they don't believe that other people will believe in them. You know, you're thinking, hey, maybe I can apply. And then what do you think? Maybe they won't think that, right? Because you want to apply, that means something in you thinks, maybe this is something I can do. But you're like, maybe they won't do that. So I personally, and everybody might have an opinion about this, but I think that we just have to get to a point where we do it anyway. You know, it's about like jumping to the other side of fear, right? I was talking to somebody here today and we're talking about what courage was. It was Rebecca. So we were talking about what courage was, and we're saying it's when you do it even though you're scared. And I think sometimes we have to just forget everybody else, forget the other naysayers, even the ones in our heads, sometimes that negative self-talk that comes, and just do it anyway.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges women have is we want to be perfectionist. At home, we have to be perfectionists, whether it's we are taking care of kids, family, whatever it is. So we have to always make sure everything is great, walking out the door, this and that. And you learn that from a young age. So when it comes at work, and that was another study that was showing that, and this is like the application, I'm sure you guys have heard about this, that women only apply when they're 100% aligning with the job that they're applying for. They will not, if there's one thing missing, I don't know, whatever that one thing might be. Men, on the other hand, it's like 30%. Oh, I can learn the rest. That's okay. I learned it, you know, you fake it until you make it. And I think that mentality of wanting to be perfect at all time and is one of the holdbacks as women. Instead of saying, I'll learn it, it's a new experience. We come into a workplace to learn and excel and then advance. So if you are not advancing, you know everything already, you're not going to excel to the next level. You're going to be where you are. So I think that was one of the things that I mentor young women, and I let them know, you know what, if you want to learn something, you can't know already about it. So try to explore opportunities where you can learn something. And so if you want to apply for a job, make sure that it's something where you can learn and advance afterwards as well. It's not just that you're going in there and doing that job. That's one. I think the other one is asking for permission. You're so friendly. You always want to say, oh, you think I can do this? No? Or you wait for someone to let you know you should be doing this instead of just go and do it. If you want to do it, regardless, sometimes, something at work doesn't exist, whether it's a meetup or if it's a program or bringing in a new perk for the company so that you can have the right employees to draw. I mean, there is so much. Employees are as responsible to bringing talent to the company as our recruiters, as are the founders, as is HR. Individually, we love working there, so we are the best advocate for that. And so that's the other thing I would say.
Yeah.
So this may not be popular, but I'm just going to lay it out there. I think we have more to do as women to lift each other up, right? It's not been called an old boys network for no reason ever since I've been alive. So I think instead of seeing each other as competition, we have to do more as sponsors to, we like to say, lift people up, dragging and kicking, like bootstrap, not by money, bootstrap people. We need to support each other, and not just once you get to the table, be the voice for everybody, but bring people with you. And I think that's particularly, we have opportunity as women of color that are in leadership positions that have a seat at the table. We have to do more. And that's starting at the beginning and doing things like this and educating folks and getting them on mentorship programs, getting them on sponsorship programs. But I think it's really important. I personally feel it is a duty of mine. It is a privilege, more importantly, of mine to be able to do that. And I think we need to rally around that and really stop saying we need representation and bringing in people of color at entry-level positions and not promoting them up. So that's my call to action. And I think that we all can do that together as a collective, because when we stand together with multiple voices, that's when change happens.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I feel the same calling, and I think we. One of the things that I realized in my career is you have to have more different at the decision-making level. So most companies focus a lot around bringing in new college grads, diverse talent. Yeah. But if you don't have the senior folks, you don't really have the opportunity, because senior people are the ones who are, it's a scaled model, right? Mm. That's where you get the most influence. So I think that it is a duty. It is a responsibility. And sometimes I joke, I say, I go on these panels and I said, but the other thing also is every one of us has a sphere of influence. We can support each other, and we must support each other. And I love seeing the men in the room, because you all also can support your colleagues and your partners. So it might be a little cruel, but I always say that as women, if we on purpose decide not to support another woman, there's a kitten that dies somewhere. and I love kittens, they're really cute. So out of PC-ness, I have to change it to a virtual kitten die somewhere, but it just doesn't have the same. But and that just illustrates how kind of powerful it is that every one of us has to feel that this is a mission. Yeah. This is a calling, because Cindy said we've all faced a lot of challenges. We've turned them into the fire that helps fuel how we react to things and how we kind of deal with these things. But there's a lot of power in being us, right? And that's something that we really don't underestimate it. You're not, I mean, this is 2019. You're not alone anymore. And that's the key thing that we have to believe. We're not alone anymore. There's a lot of support out there, but we ourselves have to start doing something. And that, I think, is where the power is.
I totally agree with everything that's been said on the panel so far. I also know or believe, right, that it's not, to your point, it's not just up to us, right? It's up to the allies as well. All right, so one more question for everyone to answer, and just a minute each would be great before we turn it over to the audience. What one piece of advice would you give to your younger self to really embrace their worth earlier or more effectively? One piece of advice for your younger self. Sepida?
I have two. The first one is start whatever it is that you want to do for work as early as possible. There's no age or later, whenever it is. I mean, we were talking about the earlier, the younger myself, but I would say do whatever you want to do at any age you want. There's no age, there's no knowledge. What I realized later on, I started my first company when I was right out of college, and I should have done that when I was in high school. But I was just not sure if it was the right time for me or if I had the experience. Come to find out at some point, whatever you start, if you want to start your company or if you want to be a manager, if you want to do anything, somebody is going to come and help you out. You're not going to be alone. You have coworkers, you have team members. So I would always say, start whatever you think you want to do and you will find the support system around you. So don't be scared. The second thing I would have told, or will tell myself, I wish I had done it, is celebrate every success. The smallest thing, you get a promotion for the first time, you get to the next level, celebrate it, because that's your motivation to move forward. Every time you're happy, you're excited, and you tap yourself on the shoulder is when you realize that you did something amazing, how small it might be. That will push you forward to the next level as well, internally and externally, because that big smile on your face will show everywhere as well. So those are my two.
I love that, the celebrate success, because that's what gives us confidence. And I love that. Thank you.
So I think, as a product of, being first generation here in the United States, it's really hard and it's challenging because being a product of immigrants, you say, come here, achieve the American dream. And the American dream was sold everywhere, right? And I think it put me on a path of, at 7 years old, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. And it was like, okay, what do? You go to high school, you go to college, you go to law school. And it becomes a very rigid, planned, vanilla experience. And I think if I were to tell myself that, which I didn't realize then, is the beauty is in the living and in the unpredictable and the unscripted, because I didn't practice law until, even though I graduated from law school at 25, I didn't practice law until I was 30. And so it's about realizing that every experience that you have. When I was a graduate from law school doing mail merges and putting labels on envelopes, and I'm looking at myself saying, well, how did I get here? This is not what I imagined at 7. But what did I learn from that experience? The hustle, the, constantly just like, I'm going to keep moving forward, is that experience that's outside of whatever your vision is, embrace it, live it, and realize now I can look back and say, my God, I can sit here and be my authentic self and share my story because it's real. It's not a script, and it's not what somebody propagandized and told me how I was supposed to live. So that is what I would tell my younger self, and I'm telling myself now as I reinvent myself again.
So I would say, first of all, I love celebrate yourself. That's one of my biggest things. I hear Kathy Ann laughing because I do have this thing about celebrating yourself that I've learned over time, and it's really good. So 2 things. One, is that you are enough. You are actually more than enough. That's what I would have told myself when I was younger. Because you do hear these messages like, oh, if you're more this, you're more than enough, Christina. The other thing I would tell myself is, girl, it's gonna work out. Because so many times when you're younger and you have these career ambitions and you think, oh, I didn't do this, and for every goal that you miss or it's not on time, you think, well, dang it, if I had done this, it's gonna be all right. And that helps for me. That gives me just a peace to be able to say, okay, whatever happens is gonna, be for a reason. I'm gonna learn for it and I'm gonna move forward. So those are my things.
For me, I wish I had known what my strengths were, or even had tools to learn what my strengths were, because and also similar to Merritt, I went all the way in school. I have my PhD and everything, and leaving academia to go to business was really hard. Mm-hmm. But it's an amazing path for me, and I was really glad I did it. But while I was doing it, it was really scary because it is a path that's charted, right? You went to PhD, you went all the way to get your PhD. Here's your path, mm-hmm. and to veer from it is very scary. But know your strength, because I'm a much better person in business than I was a scientist, much to my parents' kind of dismay, and all that money in school. I think that having that is really important. And I was thinking of something else as I was listening to all of you too, is just learn.
Yeah.
Be curious.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to stumble upon. And that's how you find your worth, for me anyway.
Oh, thank you, Mary. What a great note to end on. Can I just thank all the panelists for